Well, the microphone. Yes, okay, just making sure my technology is working. But y'all are here, just want you to know that if you have questions along the way, it's okay to make this interactive, please, feel free to engage. So this is on building credit, understanding credit reports and credit scores. So we're going to talk about understanding credit and why it matters to you, distinguishing between a credit report and a credit score, describing credit report, recognizing factors used to calculate credit scores, and discuss the ability to obtain and build credit. Have y'all ever looked at your credit report before? Yes, no, kind of, sort of. Okay, good. So most people borrow money at some point in your lives. You know that as students, you might have student loans. No one I know can just afford to buy a house or even a car outright. So true or false? The credit report and credit score only matter if you plan to borrow money. What do you think? False. False. Why do you think that? False. Like, you've been here before. Okay. Wasn't this exactly one that I went to? Okay. So information in your credit report is used to make all kinds of decisions about you. A poor credit score can make it difficult for you to get a job or get security clearance for a job. It can make it difficult for you to rent an apartment, get utilities for that apartment, get insurance, purchase a car, just get a credit card or a loan. Your credit report determines how credit worthy you are, if you're going to pay your bills or not. Who knew that a credit report could keep you from getting a job? I do. You know that? Yeah. That's not something that you think about, but employers don't want to hire irresponsible people. They want to hire people that pay their bills on time. So it really does affect you. A credit report is a statement that has information about you and your credit activity, past and present. So there are 3 nationwide credit reporting agencies. They all collect information about you, and they make their own credit report. So we have Experian, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Those are the 3 credit bureaus. So a credit report is just simply an appraisal of your credit worthiness, how likely you are to repay your debts. Lenders are going to look at that, and they're going to determine how much of a risk you are. And they look at your credit report to decide that. So how are credit reports created? A report is created when you open an account for the first time and when that creditor reports the information to a credit agency, one of those bureaus. Both of those things have to happen. For some reason, some lenders choose not to report. It's rare, but it does happen. So has anybody ever applied and received a credit card? How about like a student loan? Is anybody an authorized user on a credit card? You are. Do you know what an authorized user is? Tell me, Gabby, what's an authorized user?
So an authorized user is an individual who can be a part of somebody's credit card, but their name isn't the main profile holder.
Exactly. So like if you have a parent that has a really good credit history and they agree to add you to that credit card, say your Visa card or whatever, it's actually a great way for you to start building credit, becoming an authorized user on that card. But if you haven't done any of these things, then you probably don't have a credit report because there's literally nothing out there to report on. So these things have to happen. Okay, we're going to go through an example of a credit report. I'm going to grab my notes on this one because I recently revamped this report. I had a really old example of this guy named Miguel, and it really was just a poor example of a credit report. So we've updated a little bit here. So just because I have not done this one before. Okay. So and this is obviously just a sample credit report. So has anyone ever pulled their credit report? Yeah. Did you do the free one? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So they're all gonna look a little bit different. Each of the bureaus has their own credit report. So this is just a sample of what they're generally going to look like. So don't expect when you pull yours for look to look that or to look exactly like this. So they're all gonna have identifying information, and this is going to be your social security number. It's going to be your date of birth, your names, any names that you've ever gone by. This mostly comes into play with you have a maiden name and you're married. It's going to have any phone numbers associated with you. And it's gonna have any addresses associated with you. Like on mine, it pulls up my parents' address too. I guess at some point in some time, public record, I was associated with their address. The main thing on this is that it's not gonna include information like race and ethnicity. It is illegal for somebody to make a credit decision on you based on those factors. But this information, you just wanna look at it and make sure that it's accurate. If something's totally off, like you don't recognize an address at all, it could be an indicator of identity fraud. So just make sure that you at least are familiar with the addresses. And then it's also going to have your employment records. Not always, sometimes it will, but like on mine, I think it has like 2 of my, 4 employers for my whole entire life. So anyways, but again, just make sure that this information is accurate. Okay, then we're going to go to the public records section. This is data collected on you and it's not favorable. You don't want to have a public records section. It's going to have your financial public records like bankruptcies. It's going to have chapter 17 and chapter 13. Those are the 2 personal bankruptcy chapters. There's other ones out there for businesses. These are the personal ones. It's going to have the date that those bankruptcies were filed. That is important because bankruptcies stay on your credit report for either 7 or 10 years. So knowing when those are filed, you'll have a good idea of how long you have to wait for those to fall off of your credit report. It's not going to have records of arrest or convictions. That's not financial. This is the financial history of you. It's not going to have marriage records. That's not financial either. Any questions on that? Hopefully no one has filed bankruptcy. The next section is going to be the adverse accounts. These are going to be any collections that are out there. It's going to show the company that the money is owed to. It's going to show the date that it was filed, and it's going to show the payment status. The reason that I point this out is because you can see even though this account is paid, there's a 0 balance on it, it's still negatively affecting their credit report. So just because you pay a collection doesn't mean it's okay and it falls off and everything's fine. A collection is going to stay on your credit report for 7 years. So take that really seriously. That will really tank your credit score. It just shows that not only are you late, you're just choosing not to pay that creditor at all. Any questions on that?
So with medical debt that they said they were taking off, would that be where that would show?
Yes, exactly. That's where medical collections would show too. Yes.
I had a student who came into our office about medical debt.
Yeah.
And I just want to double check my information. And so I told them that their medical information will go off of their, take a step back. Their medical bills went to collections. And then from there, it's been in collections for 6 years already, but then they got a new creditor for it. Does that 7-year time slot start over for them?
They got a new creditor, like a new collection agency to take over? Interesting. I don't know. I can research that for you, but I don't know the answer to that question. My understanding is that collections come off of your credit report 7 years from the date that they first went delinquent. So I've never heard of a scenario where another collection agency bought a collection that was already out there. To me, that would seem, and again, so I'll research that because I don't know the answer to that, but to me, that would seem illegal. Because it can come, if it comes off from the date that it was first delinquent, even if another collections agency bought that collection, it doesn't affect the date that it still was first delinquent.
Okay,
But I will verify that.
okay. And then part two of the question. So once her 7 years are over and it's off her credit report, is she still liable to pay that bill?
She's still liable for it. It would be, again, and maybe that's why that other collection agency, if it's been 6 years, maybe they're willing to take it on for another 6 years. She's still liable for it, but it really depends on if that collection agency is gonna go after that and continue to pursue it or not. Yeah, but as far as credit, it does come off. Legally, it is supposed to come off after 7 years. Yeah. And there are some new rules about medical collections, whether they're counted, whether they have to be paid or not. So just if you get into a specific situation like that, just research that. But it is still a collection. It is still on your credit report. You are still required to pay it. It just depends on if that lender is going to count that negatively against you or not. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions on that section? Good. Okay. Okay. These are what are called trade lines. So these are anyone that you have applied for and received credit for, be it a car loan, be it a credit card, be it a student loan. This is really essentially what makes up your credit report. So these are all going to have they're going to have the same information. It may be in different places, but this is what you're going to see on it. So it's going to have who the creditor is or who the lender is. In this case, it's Automobile Finance Incorporated. And it's going to have the account number or the loan number on it. That's important because you could have, say you have like 2 Visa cards or, 2 accounts of the same. That account number is going to help, obviously, the lender, the creditor distinguish that. It's going to show the date that it was opened. And it's going to show the responsibility, whether it's you individually or whether it's a joint account, say you and your spouse, or probably you and your spouse.
Or if you co-signed.
Or if you co-signed on it, yeah. And then let's see, it's going to have the current balance on it. It's going to have the last payment made, and it's going to have the payment received. The reason that I have installment account and high balance highlighted is because this is what's called an installment loan. It is a fixed, the payment terms are fixed. So this is for an automobile. This person bought this car for $12,400, assuming they didn't put any money down. Their original balance was $12,400, and they pay every month for 60 months, $240 a month. It's set, it doesn't change, they pay it off until the last payment is made. So that is what's called an installment loan or what's called a fixed account. Fixed just simply meaning that it doesn't change. Nothing about it ever changes. The payment's the same, the terms are the same until you pay it off. I don't like the way that this is listed, but it gives you an idea. Up with the codes up there, you can see, okay, that means that they paid on time, they paid the full amount, and everything is okay. The X is not reported. I can't think of a reason why it would not be reported. That's why I really don't like this example. Kim, can you think of a reason?
Some financial institutions just don't report after 30 days. And so you do see this a lot on credit reports, but
It's just
as long as you're not seeing it past due, then you're gonna get a good.
yeah, it's just
rate.
weird
It
to me
is.
on this example how
Because
it
it
goes
is-
like, okay, and then like, oh, we didn't decide to report in September.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would do that. But anyways, if you see this on your credit report, you can see, okay, obviously means okay, X means that we didn't report. And then you can see there in June of 2016, there was a 30-day late on there. Any questions on that? Oh, sorry, I didn't do all of my fancy little pop-ups. There we go. Okay, this is gonna be an example of a revolving account. And so again, it's gonna have essentially the same information as the fixed or the installment did. It's gonna have the creditor, the account number, the date that it was opened, the responsibility. This one you can see is a joint account, not an individual. It's gonna have the account type. You can see it says revolving, whereas the other one said installment. Revolving means that there are revolving terms. So like on this one, you can see it's a credit card. Their credit limit is $1,000, but their payment is going to be different each month depending on what the balance is, what the interest is on that. And there's never really an end to it unless this creditor decides that they're going to close your credit card. That's the only time this would end. Whereas the difference on the installment loan is that there's fixed terms and there's an ending. This is revolving just because it's simply a revolving line of credit, basically. And again, it's going to have your payment history on there, and it's going to have the past dues as well. The other thing to notice on this, and I'll talk more about this a little bit later, but it shows you here what the credit limit is. It shows you what the balance is currently. So their credit limit is $1,000 to currently have a $387 balance on it. That's really good, and it's important because one of the factors that determines your credit score is how maxed out your credit is. So the fact that they have $387, it's about 30% of their credit limit, that's good. You don't want it getting creeping up there. If a creditor sees that you're at $1,000 and you owe $999 on it, that's gonna affect your credit score. Yes, ma'am.
Is that the amount that they've used? Or,
No, so see that, well, they, at one point in time, they got up to $723. That's what that high balance was. So if that, am I answering your question? They never got up to 1,000. At one point, they got up to 723. Currently, they're at 387. Yes.
What role does that play? Like the 723, they got up to that high, but they paid it off, and now why do they keep track of that?
I mean, you could, so I'm gonna speculate here.
Okay.
Because it could, and honestly, so let me preface by saying that I've been in the finance world for 25 plus years. And right now I am working at Texas Regional Bank. I'm doing financial education. My previous life, I was in mortgage lending. And so I've looked at literally thousands of credit reports over the last 25 years. My speculation on this, however, I've never seen this come into play, is they could look at some point and see how high you have that maxed out. But again, I've never seen an underwriter look at that and use that as a determinant of creditworthiness or not. They're really more gonna look at what the current balance is and what the limit is. They're really gonna look at if your payment history, if you have any late.
So,
Yeah.
does the credit limit, like, does it increase, decrease, after time or
Mhm.
anything like that?
Yeah,
Because-
absolutely.
Sorry, I'm an authorized user from, like, American Express.
Mhm.
That's my dad's
Yeah.
bank, or credit card, and, I don't know, like, what's it called? I know that my credit limit is pretty high, just
Mhm.
because
If you've got a good history,
Yeah.
your dad has a good history, yeah.
and now, since I'm using, obviously, my credit card, we pay it off as soon as
Mhm.
as soon as I have anything.
Yeah,
Pay it
yes.
off consecutively.
Yeah, So a lot of times what the creditors, American Express, for instance, will do is they'll look at that history and they'll say, oh, these people have, they're, very low risk. They pay or pay off monthly, and so they'll increase that credit limit for you. You can always request that it be increased if you wanted to, but often if they see that you have that good credit history, they'll just keep bumping it up for you. Yeah. So here's a better example of a payment history that I wanted to show you. So as you can see on this one, this is going to be a revolving credit card. You can see that the balance on it, this one doesn't have, oh, there you go. So the credit limit on this one was $10,000. At one point, they did get up pretty high to $9,869. Currently now they're at $4,252. The reason I wanted to show this to you and why I think it's a better one, because when underwriters and lenders are looking at credit reports, this is what they see. They don't see X's or okay or any symbols like that. This is what they actually see. So you can see that they opened this card in August of 2019. Nope, that's not, this one was updated. When did they open this? They opened this in June of 2008. The reason that I put that on there is because it's not going to show their credit history from June of 2008. It's going to report for usually about a year or so. That's really the important. But you can see that they've been paying their payments on time. Their payment is $139, and see it's revolving because it goes down. They keep paying that payment down, so their payment keeps going less and less and less. That doesn't mean that you should always pay the minimum payment. I'm just pointing out to you that it does decrease or increase depending on what your credit balance is. So that's why this is revolving. You can see that they go schedule payment, they pay on time pretty well until they get to February of 2019. There's $130 owed, but they're $30 late. See how it jumps up from 130 to 289? It's because now they owe February's payment and March's payment. So you don't get to just skip a payment, if you will, when you're late. If you miss a payment, now you owe double that payment, and then you also owe a late fee on top of that. So that's why I wanted to show you this one. It's just a better example of what happens to you. Now, they happened to pay the 289 and got back on track. If this person didn't do that, they just kept on, say they just paid the 130 instead of the 289. Well, then you have another late payment because you didn't pay what was due. And so that is called a rolling late until you get that account caught all the way up. So I just point that out because I don't want you to think that you can just pay that payment, that 130 the next month, and it doesn't affect. Until you pay that balance that's due, it's going to be called a rolling late. So you've got a 30-day late, a 60-day late, a 90-day late. So that can happen. Any questions on that? Moving on to inquiries. Okay, there are soft inquiries and hard inquiries. Who knows what I'm talking about? Hard inquiries, these are made by lenders when you actually apply for credit and they extend that credit to you. So it does affect your credit score. Similar inquiries can count as one. So for example, if you are shopping for a car, for 45 days, you can get multiple lenders quoting rates, and it'll count as one. Same thing for a mortgage. The reason that they only count that as one is because they know that you're being smart. You're trying to find the lowest rate out there, the best payment out there. So they give that to you for 45 days, and they only count that as one. Soft inquiries, these are going to be promotional inquiries. What credit card companies will do is they'll get your information and they're like, oh, she looks really creditworthy. We're going to extend an offer of credit to her. If you don't take that credit, it's just a soft inquiry. It doesn't affect your credit report. Any background checks for employment, if you do any volunteer work and they have to do a background check on you, those aren't going to count. and your pre-annual credit report. Those are not going to count against you. They're not going to drop your, sorry, I didn't make that clear. They're not going to drop your credit score. A hard inquiry will drop it a few points. It'll come back up as long as you make that payment on time. Any questions on that? Yes.
So I don't know if you've seen, but I've gotten a lot of ads for like this mobile app to buy cars where they're like, oh, look and see your monthly payment at any time with no credit check. Is that, so did they just do a soft inquiry when you first sign up? And how do they like, continuously monitor your credit score while letting you check your monthly payments? I don't get it.
So unless you actually accept that offer of credit, so it can be a little bit, I'm not 100% sure what you're talking about, but as long as you haven't accepted an offer of credit, it's not going to affect your credit score. Before you actually accept that credit, they're actually going to pull a hard credit report on you and make sure that what they're seeing is actually, what is still going on. So don't think that they're not going to pull a hard one on you once you accept that. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
They're just going to do that.
I just didn't know how misleading the ad was, because I was like, I work for student money management. I don't know if you can not have like no credit check, but you get to see your credit score at the same time.
Yeah. Eventually, if you take them up on it, they're going to check your credit. Yeah. Any other questions on that? Okay. Moving on to credit score. So a credit score, think about it just like your GPA. It's a piece of information that colleges look at when determining your acceptance. Do we want them? Are their grades good? Is their attendance good? How likely are they going to excel in school? A credit score is one piece of information that creditors look at to determine your willingness to repay a loan. Really, all this comes down to is how risky you are. That's what your credit score tells the lender. Are you trustworthy? Are you going to pay it back? Are you a good risk? Because any credit is a loan. They're extending money to you as a repayment, and they expect a repayment. So credit card is a loan too. All credit is. Okay. FICO score versus Vantage score. Who's heard of these terms? Come on. A FICO score is the most widely used score. 90% of lenders are going to look at your FICO score, but there is a thing out there called a Vantage score. The difference is FICO was created by an engineer, Bill Fair, and a mathematician, Earl Isaac. Somehow these two guys got together and they created some formula that they thought was a good way of making a credit score. There's 5 categories, each represent a percentage of your score. So this was part of their mathematical fact. They've got 5 different categories. They're going to weigh all these percentages and it's going to equal whatever your credit score is. Like I said previously, multiple same type inquiries count as only one for 45 days. Again, they realize that you're doing your due diligence and you're trying to shop and find the best rate. They're not going to penalize that rate. For a FICO score, credit report needs to display at least one trade line that is at least 6 months old and activity in the last 6 months. So what that's basically saying is to get a FICO score, you're going to have to wait about 6 months for it to create a score. And that's basically just looking at, are you paying your bill on time and how much of your credit are you using? Again, 90% of lenders use a FICO score. So that's really the one that you want to focus on. The Vantage score, this was developed by Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian in 2006. So obviously this is just a much newer, I think that the FICO was created like in 82. I think I took that information. Yeah. But this is a newer one, and it was created by the credit bureaus. This one has 6 categories, and instead of a percentage, they term it as extremely influential or less influential. Multiple same type inquiries count as one for only 14 days on this one. Credit report needs to display at least one trade line regardless of age. So what this is saying is that as soon as you open up a credit trade line, you have a credit report. Doesn't have to be on there for any certain amount of time. Obviously, this makes it easier to obtain a credit score. All you have to do is open one account and you have a score. But the reason why most lenders don't do this is it's just not enough time. There's not enough history there to determine whether you're creditworthy or not. Any questions on that? So credit scores are calculated using the information on credit reports. I think I've said that like 29 times now already, but that's where your credit score comes from. So credit reports and credit scores are different things. Credit reports are used to determine a score. Scores vary because each credit agency looks at different information. They calculate it a little bit differently. And so as a result, you have not one credit score, but 3 credit scores. Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, they're all going to give you a credit score. They're going to have some sort of range, like on this example, the low score is 709, the high is 720. That's nothing to worry about. If you see one where the low score is, say, 650 and the high score is 720, that's a pretty big discrepancy, and you're gonna want to find out what went wrong on there. Someone reported something wrong, someone didn't report something. As long as it's within a range, you're gonna have just 3 pretty close to scores. Okay, how are scores calculated? Payment history, payment history, payment history, payment history. 35% of your credit score is calculated based on your payment history. Why? Because it determines how risky you are. If you pay your bills on time, you're generally not a credit risk. You're going to pay your money back. If you don't, you're pretty risky. The other one that we talked about is what it's called technically is the credit utilization ratio. And again, that's just how much credit you have out there versus how much you're actually utilizing. You want to make sure that stays around 30%. Other factors are length of credit history. So basically how long you've had that account open. I would not recommend closing any accounts, even if you don't really use them anymore. Still just showing that that account is in good standing. Like I have a credit card I've had for about 20 years. I swipe on it every once in a while just so that it stays relevant and it's still showing a great credit history for me. Credit mix is another one. We talked about those revolving credit cards versus the fixed installment loans. If you have too many revolving credit lines out there, that's not really a good thing. Creditors, lenders, they want to see a good mix of credit out there. And then new credit. If you just opened like a dozen new credit cards, that doesn't look really good. It looks like you might be financially distressed. So don't go out there and just open, again, a dozen credit cards at one time. Any questions on that?
So if you were to increase your limit, does that count as new credit?
No, that's not.
So you said it's bad to open like new accounts at the same time, but it's also good to have a mix of the credit cards. So like, how long would you suggest like opening those different accounts like in between those cards?
So really the main point in this one is just to not accept every credit card offer that you get, really. I mean, if you go buy a new car and then, a month later you get a credit card or 2 even, that's not a big deal. What it's talking about is like, oh my gosh, you just opened a dozen credit cards at the same time. That's a little bit risky. One thing I do want to say in that though, is that if you know you're going to be making a big purchase, like say a car or buying a house, wait to go get that Nebraska Furniture Mart credit card at 0% to finance your house. Wait to do that. Those big purchases are going to be more affected by you opening new accounts. So again, just that in the mortgage, I cannot tell you how many times. Do not open any new accounts until we close on your loan. Same thing with the car, just because it's a bigger purchase, you know, taking out like, because every time you accept credit, that does deem your credit report a little bit. So again, if you're doing bigger purchases, be mindful of that. But if you know, like I said, if you do buy a car and then open a credit card within a month or two, that's not a big deal. Any other questions? Credit score range, most scores range from 300 to 850. A credit score above 670 is considered good by most businesses. I can tell you I've never seen a 300 credit score. I've seen 400s, but I've never seen 300s. I've also never seen 850. I've seen high 8s, but never 850. So, again, it's pretty self-explanatory. The higher your credit score is, the more advantageous it is for you. You'll get approved for things. The lower your credit score, the higher interest rate you pay. And I'm sure you can see that adverse relationship. You might get that credit card, you might get that car loan. But would you rather be paying 3% on that car loan or 23% on that car loan? And car loans go up to 23%. Don't do that. Do not pay that much interest on things. And again, that's why your credit report or your score matters. They'll give you credit, but they'll just charge you a stupidly high interest rate for it. So beware of that. Okay. Know your credit report. Even if you've never used credit, it's possible that you have been the victim of identity theft. So regardless if you have opened credit or not, take advantage of requesting that free credit report annually. It's free. So make sure you do it. It's just a really good way to keep track of what information is out there on you. If I can, I don't know if I can get this. That show. I'm gonna drag this over here real quick, just so that you guys can see what it looks like. Does that work? Yes, okay. So this is what that annual credit report website looks like. It's annualcreditreport.com, pretty simple. But this is what it looks like, and it really just walks you through requesting your credit reports from all 3 bureaus. You do have to go through the steps of requesting each one. Be prepared to answer random information about you. Like last time I did it, it asked me, it gives you like 3 different, what car have you ever driven? A Honda Odyssey, a GMC, and an Acura. Like, this is very random information, things that people really wouldn't know about you, but it's on your credit report. So be prepared to just answer really random questions like that. But this is what that website looks like. Don't be alarmed. I don't know why they have that little thing on there. It looks kind of shocking, but that's what it looks like. Has anybody done this? Yeah. Would you think like it's a pretty easy process?
Yeah, they asked like different addresses over like the last 5 years and stuff like that.
Yeah, just like personal identifying information. And also you can go on there too. I haven't talked about this either, but if you do think that, your credit has been compromised, you can go on those websites and you can put a freeze on your credit. And what that means is that any lender that tries to run your credit report, they won't be able to do it unless you actually call Equifax or TransUnion and have that freeze removed. It just protects you. I actually have freezes on my credit, on all 3 of them, just because for me, it's an extra layer of protection. You don't have to do that, but I don't want anybody going out there trying to use my identity and trying to open things up. That way the creditors have to contact you if you're not sitting right there.
In order for somebody to say run a credit line, they would need your social security? Only, okay, because I had my purse stolen in December and I had my ID in there, but thankfully I had my social with me. So I was just trying to make sure.
So they'll need that. They'll need your social, your date of birth. Those are the 2 main things. Yeah. But yeah, so you should check just to make sure. having a freeze on there is a little bit inconvenient because, but if you know that you're gonna go try to open credit, it's not like, we just bought a new car in November, so I'm like, okay, I know that I need to remove the freeze on it. Okay, review your credit report every 12 months. It's free. There's no reason why you shouldn't do that. If you see any errors, dispute them. The CFPB is a really good resource for that. They have like a form letter for you to print out and instructions if you want to dispute anything. Just go to CFPB, Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. Although I've heard that Trump is trying to shut it down and they weren't allowed to go to work yesterday. So, I don't know. So that's out there. Again, just protect your credit worthiness. Just because I want, like, if I impress anything on you, I want you to know how important it is because it affects not just you borrowing money. It affects so many aspects of your life. And even borrowing money, again, it affects what interest rate you can borrow money at. So it's just super important. And then again, moderate your credit usage. Keep that limit below 30%. I know I hear people talking about like credit's bad and they're so scared to open a credit. Credit is good. You just have to manage it. You need to have a credit score. You need to have that credit history out there. It makes life difficult if you don't. But as long as you manage it, you're fine. So like I treat my credit cards almost like a debit card. Sometimes, especially if I'm on Amazon. Like if I buy something from Amazon, I have my Chase credit card linked to it. So if I buy something for, $28, I'll just go to Chase and make that payment as soon as I buy it. I treat it kind of like a debit card. You don't have to be that crazy about it, but I do with Amazon. Like if I'm shopping for something like that, I just treat it, like a credit card. But again, use it, utilize it, just manage it wisely. Don't be scared of it. And then finally, building credit. Again, you want to have credit. It's a good thing. You need it. So a lot of credit card companies, Visa, whatever, who else is out there, Discover, they'll have student credit cards. They recognize that you're not going to have a credit history necessarily. And so they have credit cards that are specifically made for students. Another really good way to establish credit is to get a secured credit card. And what that looks like is it's a regular credit card. Again, say it's with a Visa, but you put a deposit down on it. So say they're like, we'll approve you for credit. You've got to put $300 deposit down. That's their security, not knowing what your credit history is. In case you go off the rails and you don't pay that back, they've got that security deposit. So that's what it's for. A lot of times store credit cards are easier to get than just like your regular American Express or what have you. The drawback to that is that those interest rates are going to be really high. They're going to be like 27, 28, 29%. They are easier to get. And again, I'm not saying don't get it. I'm just saying treat it as cash, treat it as a debit card. You don't have to worry about the interest rate if you're paying it off every month. You're not going to get charged interest. So those are good. Like I have an athletic card. I get rewards from it. I get, you spend over however much and you get $50. So it's good. Like I use that. But again, if you're paying it off every month, you don't need to be worried about that high interest rate, and those store credit cards are going to have high interest rates. Become an authorized user. This is if you have a trustworthy parent. Normally it's a parent. I don't think that there's anybody else that you could be an authorized user on. But if that parent has good credit history and they're willing to add you as an authorized user, you have full access to that credit line.
What about, I was saying, what about like aunties and uncles who are involved in their child's life?
So, I mean, I think unless they're like a legal guardian, now again, that's up to whoever is issuing that credit. I mean, if you have that specific question, you can certainly reach out to that credit card company. But I do believe that it's a legal guardian situation. Yeah.
So in the past, it was like if you were married, your husband got a card and you got a card, was in his name and you would get a card in your name. Do they not do that anymore?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay.
You can open individual credit, you can open joint credit. Like my husband has a credit card that I'm an authorized user on. But, and so you get a card in your name, yeah,
Yeah, but it's not.
but
your
it's not
credit. Yeah,
joint.
right.
So if I totally go off the rails and charge up all kinds, it's his responsibility. That's on him.
That irritated.
You can always ask somebody to be a co-signer for you. Again, this is just gonna be somebody that, you know, you have a good relationship with. That one is not necessarily a parent or a legal guardian. You could have somebody that is not related to you be a co-signer for you. Pay your bills on time every time, even if you're just paying the minimum payment. Like that ratio is really important, but if you're tight, you know, a couple of months and you can just only make that minimum payment, at least make that minimum payment. It's so important to do that. Speaking of being a cosigner, if somebody ever asks you to do that, I like to call this like lending your credit worthiness. I would think long and hard before you lend your credit worthiness to somebody, because if they don't pay that bill, if they don't manage it wisely, you're responsible for it. Just as if you had taken that credit out yourself. If you co-sign on it, you are 100% responsible for it. So don't lend your credit worthiness to other people unless you are absolutely certain that they're going to manage it well. And then you can also use a credit building service. One of these is an example of this is Experian Boost. I'm not going to go through this whole thing. They are out there. And basically what they do is they add payments that don't normally reflect on your credit report. So like your utilities, your water, your electricity, those things don't report on your credit report. You can ask them to, but they're not going to automatically. Cell phone, internet, things like that. What will reflect on your credit report is if you are delinquent on your cell phone and it goes into collections, that will report on your credit report. But just your monthly service, that's not going to.
I have Clash right now, but if you would like a good one, I use Self. Self has been really good.
Self?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's like Blue, but it does like a credit booster in the builder, and you can pay like, I think, $35 a month, and it builds over time.
Yeah, that's the thing too. And so thank you for that.
No problem.
Some of them are free and some of them do require a paid membership to do that. And so just be aware of that. Do your research if you are considering using a credit boost of some sort. Any questions on that? Okay. That is the end of my presentation. Gabby, do you want to reference this QR code?
Yes, first and foremost, let's thank Denise for being here. And, so if you guys do not mind, will you scan this QR code that's up here on here? We just want some feedback on her presentation. I think it's like 3 questions. We try to keep it very simple, you know, squirrel moments. But of course, you can utilize this time to ask her any questions that you would personally have. She'll stick around for a couple of minutes. And like I said earlier, please take some pizza because I'm not taking it home. Sound good? Sound great?
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, and then also make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at TW Maroon Money. We have the entire, what is it called, Meet with the Expert series out. I think in another 2 weeks, we'll have another one. It's about on average every 2 weeks. And then after spring break, we have an expert coming once a week until graduation. We have packed the calendar out. So please utilize that. And we also have an event next week. It's a tabling session where you guys can come and get some information about discounts across Denton, as well as either getting noodles in a cup or some mac and cheese in a cup. Hashtag, I haven't went shopping yet, so it's either one of those. Whatever Walmart will have that day I go shopping. And I think I'm getting up to 30 cups, so first come, first serve to that tabling session.
Where is the table gonna be?
It will be, great question. That's an excellent question. It will be in the Union first floor, starting at 11 a.m. I forgot what we were calling it. Discounts in a cup of discounts. I think it's like cup of discounts or cup of savings or something.
Okay, so you have to get a cup of noodles.
Yes.
Then you can't do mac and cheese.
I have not.
gotta do
yet
cup of noodles, 'cause that's the
seen
brand.
Or
Something, I forgot.
Thanks, Gabby.
Oh, thank you, Shalise.
Y'all have
Bye,
a good evening.
Shalise.
Since I'm about 20,
Bye.
I'm starting to feel like that pressure, like, okay, it's time to